The evening had started quietly enough. Nathan had just finished dinner and was sinking into the warm comfort of his chair, half listening to the soft sounds of the city beyond his window. The clock ticked in its steady rhythm, a sound that usually brought calm, but tonight it felt oddly loud, like it was counting down to something. He wasn't expecting anyone. His days followed a pattern, simple and familiar, and he found peace in that routine. So when the knock came at the door, sharp and deliberate, he hesitated before standing up. Visitors at this hour weren't common. Opening the door, he found them both standing there. Two women he knew well, two people who had been a part of his life for as long as he could remember. They were dressed simply, but the hallway light gave their faces a warm, almost glowing look. Their smiles were kind, but their eyes held something he couldn't quite read, something that made him uneasy, even as it drew him in. "Can we come in?" one of them asked. Her tone was polite, but carried something deeper. He couldn't place. He stepped aside, still puzzled, and watched them walk past him into the room. The air seemed to change with their presence. The familiar walls suddenly felt closer, more watchful, as though they were holding in whatever was about to happen. They sat down on the couch, side by side, calm but focused. He could tell from the small glances they shared that this wasn't a casual visit. His curiosity grew, mixing with a quiet nervousness he tried to hide. We started with small talk, of course. It would have been strange not to. He asked about their day, their work, their families, and they answered easily enough. Yet behind every word was a sense that these details were just a cover for something else. The longer we talked, the clearer it became. Something unspoken hung in the air. Their laughter lasted a moment too long. Their eyes met his a little too steadily. Every time one leaned forward to speak, he became aware of how the space between them was shrinking. He tried to brush it off as imagination, the product of a restless night and unexpected company. But when one of them reached out, her hand resting lightly against his for a moment too long, his calm faded. That touch wasn't by chance. He looked between them, his pulse quickening. They didn't look away or fidget. They seemed almost expectant, like they were waiting for him to notice what was already clear. "Is everything all right?" he asked, trying to sound steady. Their silence spoke louder than words. One gave a small smile while the other leaned back against the couch. Studying him with calm focus that made the air feel heavier, he realized then that this wasn't an ordinary visit. Whatever had brought them here tonight carried weight, and he could feel that weight pressing down on the room. The clock ticked on, steady and loud, marking the moment. His home, once peaceful, now felt like a stage. And across from him sat two women who seemed ready to change everything. He didn't yet know what they wanted, but he knew one thing with complete certainty. This was no ordinary evening. The room had grown quiet. Not the kind of silence that follows small talk, but the kind that feels intentional. They weren't here by accident. Their eyes told him that. And though he didn't know what was coming, every nerve in him was bracing for it. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. "You didn't just come here to talk about the weather?" he said softly, breaking the silence. The one sitting closest smiled faintly, almost relieved that he had finally said it. "You've always been observant," she said, her tone steady, carrying more meaning than the words themselves. Her companion nodded, glancing at him with quiet intensity. "We came because there's something we need to ask, something we can't keep to ourselves any longer." The words hung in the air like a challenge. His heartbeat quickened as he searched their faces, trying to understand. Neither of them looked away. If anything, they seemed to draw courage from each other, as though they prepared for this moment and finally chosen tonight to speak. He swallowed, trying to keep his voice even. "What is it?" For a moment neither answered. They exchanged a look, not nervous, but sure. And then the one who had been quietest leaned forward. "We need your trust," she began. "Before we tell you, we need to know you'll listen, that you won't walk away." He blinked, caught between curiosity and worry. Their seriousness was clear, and though he had no idea what this was about, he could feel the weight of their request already. "I'll listen," he said finally. She exhaled as if she had been holding her breath. Her hand brushed his briefly, grounding him. "Good. Because what we want to ask isn't simple, and it's not something we've ever shared before." His heart thudded in his chest. The air between them seemed charged. like the moment before a storm. The other woman finally spoke, her tone calm but soft. We've trusted you for a long time, more than you may realize. And lately, we've both felt something we can't ignore anymore. Something important we need to face together. The words surprised him. He wasn't sure if he had understood them correctly, or if his thoughts had twisted them into something else. His breath caught as he searched their faces again, needing clarity. "What are you saying?" he asked, though part of him already knew. Her gaze didn't waver. "We're saying we want to share something meaningful with you. Something that goes beyond what anyone else could imagine." The room seemed to shift, his thoughts spinning. They weren't speaking in riddles anymore. The meaning was clear, even if unspoken. Questions rushed to his mind. What if this changes everything? What if this changes everything? What if we can't go back? But underneath all the confusion was another feeling. He couldn't ignore a quiet pull toward the two people sitting across from him, their eyes steady, their expressions sincere. He leaned back, trying to steady himself. The clock ticked again, louder now. "This is a lot," he admitted. "We know," one of them said softly. "But we've thought about this for a long time. We couldn't hide it anymore." Her honesty disarmed him. This wasn't sudden or careless. It was real, thought through, and now spoken aloud. They had chosen him to hear it. That trust felt heavy. Part of him wanted to escape, to end the moment, and pretend it hadn't happened. But another part, stronger, wanted to stay and understand. He took a deep breath, looking at them both. "You're asking me to cross a line we can't uncross." They both nodded. "Yes," one whispered. "We know." Their honesty left no space for doubt, and though his mind was tangled with hesitation, his heart chose to listen. The silence grew again, thick and full of meaning. They sat together, calm but watchful. He realized this wasn't pressure or manipulation. It was a choice, his to make, but knowing that didn't make it easier. "I don't know what to say," he admitted quietly. One of them leaned forward, elbows on her knees, eyes steady on his. "You don't have to say anything yet. Just be honest with yourself." Her words cut deep. Honesty, that was the real challenge, because if he was honest, he had to admit how often he'd noticed them. The glances, the laughter that lingered, the warmth in their company. He had ignored those thoughts, told himself they were nothing. But now the truth was out in the open. The other woman moved a little closer, her voice soft and kind. "We don't want to rush you. We just want you to see that this matters to us, that it's real." He could feel the closeness between them, a quiet understanding more than anything else. His instincts told him to stay calm, to not let emotions lead, but his heart was already listening. "I'm afraid," he said honestly. "If we cross this line, there's no going back." The first woman reached out, her hand touching his gently. "We know," she whispered, "but we still want to try. We trust you." Her touch carried more meaning than any words. His pulse raced, thoughts spinning between fear and hope, but he stayed. That small choice was enough to change everything. Their faces softened, relief passing between them. For the first time that night, the tension lifted. The first woman gave a quiet laugh. "I wasn't sure you'd let yourself open up." He smiled faintly. "Neither was I." We sat there for a while. The line had been crossed, though its weight hadn't yet sunk in. His thoughts buzzed, but strangely he felt calm. The clock ticked on, steady and endless. Tonight wasn't about rules or expectations. It was about truth. And as he looked at them, two people who had trusted him with something real, he knew life wouldn't be the same again. Time blurred after that. Once the truth was shared, the air itself felt lighter. They didn't push him or rush him. That alone told him how deeply they had thought this through. They weren't here to test him or make demands. They just wanted to be honest, and they wanted him to be honest too. And to his surprise, he wanted that as well. We sat together in quiet for a while longer, the weight of everything still hanging gently between us. One of them reached for his hand again, this time with quiet confidence. The other watched, calm but attentive. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," she said gently. Her words settled in his heart. Afraid? Yes, he was. Maybe still am. But beneath it all was something stronger. A wish to see where this might lead. He let out a small, nervous laugh. I feel like I'd stepped into a story without knowing the ending. Maybe that's the point, the other said softly. Some endings aren't meant to be known. Some are meant to be lived. Her calm voice drew him in further. The night unfolded slowly, filled with simple moments, a smile, a look, a shared quiet that said more than words could. It wasn't about grand gestures, but about honesty and connection built over time and trust. Do you realize what this means? He asked quietly. Yes, one replied. It means we finally stopped pretending. That truth hit him deeply. Pretending, yes, that's what they had been doing for so long. Pretending not to feel, not to care, not to wonder. Tonight that pretense was gone. What remained was honesty. The minutes slipped away unnoticed. The clock kept time, but it no longer mattered. The world outside felt distant. Inside this room, there was only understanding, trust, and quiet courage. Every glance, every word carried meaning. We were stepping into something undefined but real. And somehow that was enough. When he finally noticed the light of morning filtering through the blinds, it felt unreal. The world outside was waking up, but inside time still felt still. For a long moment, he didn't move. The memories of the night before returned, not as confusion, but as calm. What had once seemed impossible had become real. He turned and saw them both resting, peaceful in the morning light. They looked calm, different, like the weight of uncertainty had finally lifted. A wave of emotion rose in him. Care, respect, and a little fear. Because now came the question, what happens next? He sat quietly, thinking. The line we crossed couldn't be erased. The only question was whether we carry it forward with honesty. Behind him, he heard them stir. One opened her eyes, then the other. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then one smiled softly. Good morning. Her tone was warm. He smiled back. Morning. Her tone was warm. He smiled back. Morning. The second woman sat up slowly, her gaze steady. You're quiet, she said. Just thinking, he admitted, about what comes next. They exchanged a look, familiar, but this time full of reassurance. We knew it wouldn't be simple, the first said gently. But whatever comes next, we don't regret being honest. Her words eased something inside him. The fear didn't vanish, but it softened. He nodded. Neither do I. The quiet that followed felt peaceful, not uncertain, but understanding. As morning went on, we moved through small routines, making coffee, gathering things, adjusting to the rhythm of a new day, but nothing about it felt ordinary. Every glance carried meaning. When they finally prepared to leave, there was no dramatic goodbye, only a shared pause at the door. This isn't the end, one whispered before stepping out into the sunlight. The door closed softly behind them, and he stood still, the memory of the night still alive in his chest. No. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something fragile, brave, and unforgettable.